We deliver your digital transformation goals by bringing together world-class technology, specialized experts, sustainable ICT-based solutions. We collaborate with your business to integrate your systems, solve your business problems, and accelerate your success. We are partner and vendor agnostic, bringing you the best solution for your business. We work with you to apply tailored technology and services solutions to transform your business challenges into sustainable differentiators. Cloud services. Innovate, scale, and improve business agility. DevOps. Reduce complexity with improved security, better compliance, and reduced cost. Data. Gain insights, drive business value, and enable transformational change. AI and automation. Make data-driven predictions, optimize, and personalize. IT as a service. Reduce costs, drive efficiencies, and improve end-user satisfaction. Enterprise security solutions. End-to-end security offering across all our solutions. Infrastructure as a service. Optimize your resources with hybrid workload solutions. We make progress effortless for clients across industries. We build, integrate, secure, and transform. Altron Systems Integration.
Welcome everyone to this session of Manufacturing Indaba 2021 panel, breakaway panel 16, where we will be touching on advanced manufacturing. So advanced manufacturing is broadly defined, technology and knowledge intensive manufacturing. It is then held with partnerships that need to be between various stakeholders across society, including private firms, universities, science councils, government agencies, government departments, and others, owing to the rapidly growing influence of advanced manufacturing technologies in a field which is heading the progression of competing economies. It's become more important than ever for Africa to move into this domain. By integrating advanced manufacturing into production practice, the goals of enhanced productivity, lower costs, and improved of export-oriented industries are ultimately achieved. Digital infrastructures enabling efficient manufacturing, extended product life, and practical resource recovery, backbone of the fourth industrial revolution. How can advanced manufacturing technologies offer companies dramatic opportunities to boost productivity and competitiveness while simultaneously reduce environmental impact of manufacturing? What barriers must African countries overcome to adopt advanced manufacturing? How can policymakers encourage organizations to embrace the technological possibilities in an integrated manner, along with business models to make proposed approach attractive with a maximum economic return on investment, as well as to improve the quality of lifetime of products across production supply chains? Developing and maintaining skills for manufacturing innovation. That is a background of our discussion today, and I will now introduce our esteemed panel, and starting with Mark Walker, Associate Vice President, South, East and West Africa for IDC. Mark Walker currently leads the Sub-Saharan Africa Research and Consulting Practice at IDC MEA. He has over 25 years of experience in the information technology and telecoms industry. In his position at IDC, Mr. Walker is responsible for leading analysis of regional technology markets and the larger political, socio-economic environment in which these markets is a large proportion of research on IDC MEA. It is of primary nature. He is able to acquire first-hand experience of the various technology markets in the region. Walker has conducted extensive technology research and has personally participated in over 150 consulting assignments as a consultant, project leader, or analyst. Welcome you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you very much, Solani. Good to be here. It's a very interesting area very critical area as we go into the South African and indeed the African continent's continued growth path. And looking forward to very fruitful discussions today. Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. And greetings to the audience and also to the fellow panelists.
Thank you, Sam. Our next member is Mr. Dembe Nzelele, Portfolio Manager from TIA, Advanced Manufacturing, a Technology Innovation Agency. Mr. Dembe is a qualified electrical and electronics engineer with over 8 years experience in technology development, management, and commercialization. In 2019 March, he left CSIR as a senior engineer to join TIA as a portfolio manager for advanced manufacturing. His role involved funding, managing, and building the portfolio of innovative technologies to provide the needed solutions that will improve and bring South African manufacturing sector to the forefront of development and commercialization. In his spare time, he enjoys jogging, playing musical instruments, and hiking. Our esteemed panel, welcome, Mr. Dembe.
Thank you very much, Tolani. And in just addition to my many hobbies, one of the things that I enjoy doing is talking about technology innovation and in advanced manufacturing. So I'm excited to be in this panel and to a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
I have Mr. Martin Blakenot from Smart Manufacturing. He's a Smart Manufacturing lead for Altron Integrated System. Mr. Blakenot hails from the teaching to business leader. He runs the workforce management and smart manufacturing business for Altron Systems Integration, with 7 successful businesses built, turned around, led to success, both as an entrepreneur and as a leader in large corporation. From IBM to Altron, Martin has acquired a strong set of strategic business development and leadership skills and a wealth of experience spanning over 20 years. Linking these skills with his passion for upliftment of people through technology, Martin leads and supports his teams and his clients as they embrace their digital journeys. Welcome, Mr. Blakenot.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Solani. Very pleased to be here for Altron Systems Integration and looking forward to a great panel discussion.
Thank you. Okay, our next panelist is Mr. Konrad Bezuidenhout. So Mr. Konrad is a sustainability public affairs strategic communications advisor specializing in research, strategy, and strategic partnerships, engagement, and support. During his career of 2 decades, he has worked across legislative support and politics, organized business, and for-profit consulting. He formerly headed economic policy at Butsa and was also executive director of Manufacturing Circle, during which he participated in advanced manufacturing policy oversight at the invitation of the then Department of Science and Technology. His subsequent advisory work has focused on sustainability, future-proofing, waste policy, extended producer responsibility for corporate and public sector circular economy promotion. He holds a master's degree in political economy from Nelson Mandela University and a postgraduate certificate in sustainable business from University of Cambridge. Welcome, Mr. Bezuidenhout. It's a pleasure to have you in our panel.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. I was with the manufacturing in Durban right from the start when I was still working at the manufacturing circle, so it's always great to return.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I am just not certain our other panelist from Aerosult, who has not managed to join us. I hope we will solve that problem momentarily. So as a backdrop that we have given in terms of advanced manufacturing, from a global competitiveness aspect, from industrialization, from technology alignment, cooperation, I will just give an opportunity to each of you to just give a view in terms of that backdrop before we get into the discussion. And what are your thoughts in terms of where we are heading with advanced manufacturing, in terms of industrialization, and also in terms of business. So I will start with Mr. Walker, and then I will follow with Mr. Tembe, and then I will follow with Mr. Blicknote, and then I will give Mr. President in that order. Thank you. Mark, I will switch off my mic.
Thanks, Olani, and great to be on with the panel as usual. I think the interesting thing is, the manufacturing sector in South Africa is faced by, especially the advanced manufacturing sector, is faced by some great opportunity, looking at growth rates in the region of around 6% over the next 5 years, which in an economy like South Africa is significant. Total value of the sector would be around $2.8 billion in constant currency. And the growth is significant. If you look at the overall South African sector, some of the drivers obviously remain the same. So how do you manage spend? How do you improve the ability to execute faster speed and manage the quality on that? And then some of the big technologies that are coming forward are especially around artificial intelligence, instrumenting your entire factory, making the dark factory a reality. And also from the Internet of Things, where there's not only the instrumentation, but linking that via cloud and similar technologies to be able to integrate your entire process, have instant visibility, manage that process on a real-time basis. And, right from the inset or the inputs, if you like, right through to the outputs as you're managing the entire chain. Obviously, the drawbacks are possibly a big reliance on the supply chain. That will continue. But certainly we're seeing, some of the other challenges such as skills and the general uncertainty in South Africa. They will remain, but technology does offer a way to overcome that going forward. Looking at just in the IoT sector, for instance, globally, that's an industry worth almost $1 trillion by 2024. And South Africa, the growth rate is in just in the instrumentation and the Internet of Things area around advanced manufacturing. And we're looking at a growth rate of around 14% for this period. So a very attractive sector that does have its challenges. I think technology certainly offers a way around those challenges, a way to address them going forward. And if you look at the demand in the South African, and indeed in the greater African environment, the demand is there for manufactured goods in the consumer sector and in the business to business and commercial sectors. So a great area to be in. Good opportunity. I think technology offers the way forward in terms of realizing the opportunity and taking it forward from there. So I think then handing over to the next panelist.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we move over to you, Mr. Tembe, may I kindly introduce Mr. September? Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join earlier. Welcome, Mr. September, and we had given your introduction in terms of your background and where you are currently, and now we are going into a round of insights into where do we see manufacturing, advanced manufacturing in terms of the fields and the sectors of economy. And so we were just starting off with Mr. Walker, and perhaps I will give you an opportunity later on, but I thought it's just to introduce you at this moment so that we don't leave you behind. And then I will give you an opportunity after Mr. President.
Thank you, Tolani. And thank you again, Mr. Mark Walker. And I'm inclined to actually agree with Mr. Mark on the fact that we are now sitting at 14% GDP contribution currently. However, even though that looks like it is very attractive, it is still not on par with our current other growing or developing economies such as Brazil and Indonesia, who are sitting at around 20% for the advanced manufacturing contribution to the GDP. So there's still a lot of things that need to be done. One of the things is to look at innovative technologies and how to actually diffuse them and actually adopt them into our everyday to-day kind of manufacturing sectors. So this is important and is quite critical that we look at it. Mr. Mark also mentioned different technologies that we need to look at, and that's what we're also looking at technology innovation agencies, and that's what we're funding. So I'm excited about that. Thank you very much.
It's your turn, Mr. Blicknott.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for bringing me on. I think there's a tremendous change in the world happening at the moment. And it is absolutely a critical change. And that change relates to the emergence of what is being traditional IT and what we call traditional OT. So explaining that a little bit, if I am a business leader, historically, we've had these silos of managing manufacturing. And what I'm seeing more and more in the marketplace, and what I'm seeing our clients are asking for more and more, is how do I get control and automate that manufacturing sector and that manufacturing environment? And Mark has just been talking about 14% growth. Mark's been talking about a 6% growth in manufacturing, 14% in IoT and instrumentation. And this is the exact discussion, and I'm seeing it with a lot of the clients. How do I get control of the IT and the OT environments, and how do I make them merge to one? So I'm a CEO of a company. I traditionally look at AI. I'm looking at AI. I'm looking at cloud. I'm looking at the security of my environment. And now suddenly I have these legacy, if you want to call it, OT, operational technology, where I am looking at different machinery and the way the machinery works and the way the machinery fits together. So I will have, from one vendor, I'll have a whole operation system, and another vendor who is, let's take a brewery as an example. I have a brewery that one system runs the pressure sensors and the temperatures, another system runs the pumps, another system runs all the sort of the trucks in the yard coming in. And how do I bring this together so that I'm managing and choreographing a story, a manufacturing story, that I can keep control as a leader of my organization? As a financial leader, I can control the finances associated with every step, and I know exactly where my manufacturing and my financial processes are. As an HR person, how do I manage that HR layer all across this business and make sure that I've got the right staff at the right time, at the right place, managing this environment? And then how do I, at the same time, ensure, as I join those old, if I want to call it legacy systems that weren't built for the internet, how do I join those together and make sure that those environments are safe and secure? And then bringing all of this together, my clients are asking me day in and day out, how do I get value from the information I have? I've got and Mark again was talking about the whole area of the country needing, to go green. And he was talking about the whole area of looking after the environment. How do I manage and how do I look after the whole area that is, I've got this IoT feed from a water pump, but how can I turn that into value? How can I say, well, I'm recycling so much water, therefore I've got it, I can therefore go to the municipality, A, get some money back because I'm doing the proper recycling work, but B, I have a proper story to go out to the marketplace with, and C, I'm actually saving money, both from a regulatory compliance perspective, as well as from a basic business perspective, which makes sense. So these are the key factors that go into what we're doing. The other piece that I think is critical in this market, and I've actually started a skills academy, a graduate academy for this, is the area of skills in IoT, the skills in smart manufacturing. There is a lack of skills, especially when you're looking at this mergence of OT and IT, these two traditional sort of split areas, and bring them together. How do I build the skills to help people do this? And this has become a very big talking point at the moment, that whole area. And I'm finding a lot of my clients are actually asking, please will you assist, please will you support, please will you dig in and get this going? And I think in South Africa, we have an incredibly smart and well-developed work ethic and a well-developed young base of people. Yes, they do have to learn. There's no question about it. but we have a tremendous set of skills and we have a tremendous environment. And our skills, I'm seeing it already from international clients, people asking us for those skills because South African skills are so well respected. And it's for us, I think, as a community to drive that skill development process. So yeah, two major themes on my side, the IT and OT emergence and the importance of the smart manufacturing and the importance of security and analytics and all of that as a holistic solution to add value to business. And the other side is driving and developing the skills to join that together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blicknott. That was good. I think you've taken it from where Mark and Dembe from an external point of view with the GDP and how we are in terms of matching with the world, and you've brought it into the organization in terms of integratedness. How do we integrate the OT, the IT, for effectiveness that will take us to efficiency? So I'm happy that at least we are moving together in synergy. Thank you very much for that insightful Mr. Blicknott. Mr. President Note, we'll hand over to you, and then after yourself, I will hand over to Mr. September. Thank you.
Yeah, I think perhaps I'll just, by way of introduction, take it a little bit from the other side. I think there's a tendency for people out there that may be engaged in manufacturing, traditional manufacturing activities, whether they are individuals or independent businesses or big businesses that are not yet, that have not yet put a toe in the water with advanced manufacturing, to think that it may be intimidating, that it may be only for bigger companies, that it may not be somebody for micro enterprises to get involved with. So I think the first thing that I just want to say is that you know, these things all have to start somewhere, and they normally start at the level of a single product first, before it moves to you know, something that involves a product that needs to support a business model or product service systems, before it moves to entire systems and networks, before you have a complete you know, choreographed extensive system that works from upstream down through to downstream. I think that's the first point that I want to make. So even if you are you know, an individual working at a very small scale, this could work for you. And then secondly, I think before deciding that the cost barriers or other barriers to entry may be too high to implement advanced manufacturing technologies, I think it's important to keep in mind that this technology has been, or these technologies may still be developing, but they have been around for quite a while. And in some cases, the prices of these devices, of industrial quality printers, of data and AI-driven technologies are going down. So it's best to investigate first. If you are busy with a particular product, with a particular activity, to put a toe in the water and to start investigating what is there, what kind of technology can I access to do this. And at the very basic level, it's obviously because you'll save on resources and you'll reduce waste. But I think in general, it's also because it opens up opportunities for you to become a part of these technologies, to start to understand it, because the diffusion of technology really starts to only work if you really start to use them, start to engage with it, and then start to see what the possibilities of these are. So, I mean, even if it's something that you've never considered before, it's very much worth your while to start opening up you know, a leaf on this, and to start jotting down some notes and start thinking a little bit creatively about how you can start to integrate some of these technologies into your processes. And I'll leave it there for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I like what you say, that it should not be left to think that it's only for the big corporates who have this technology drive value, which is what Mr. was touching on, value to the customer. We can start at where we are, at any size of an organization to yield results from this. Mr. September, I think you will give us good insights as to how this technology is used in the aviation and where you have been. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I just want to come from, I think, from what I've just heard since joining, a very robust technology side of things, and that's about what the subject is about. I just want to come from an A&D. A&D is aerospace and defense, which is basically my mainstay, and just talk about what we face. As I think panelists will be aware, the aerospace and defense are usually referred to as an apex industry in terms of creating and disseminating technologies. And we're not different in South Africa. However, the old adage of comparative advantage obviously is being muddled with AMT, because all of the factors that we learned and grew up at Varsity with are really so marginally involved in this. I want to start with two things that we've experienced in aerospace, and that is applying this technology, advanced manufacturing, to the IP, the intellectual property that you've got, has shown us that it has, you can, and we are perhaps a little bit in front in terms of adoption of AMT in South Africa, but we find that the barrier is actually not technology, that we are quite well versed in. The barrier is IP. We find that intellectual property means that you are subservient to your supplier in a supply chain situation. We've got suppliers into Boeing, we've got suppliers into Airbus, etc., and all, very much matching to the tune. Obviously, applying AMT, that's almost a given in our sector, and only as much able to influence events and pull the blanket, as it were, if they are offering some kind of intellectual property input, which takes it out of just the technological capabilities that you may have accumulated and mastered, because those are taken as a given, and your competitive space is prescribed, circumscribed by your ability to participate as a technological IP contributor in the relationship in the supply chain. That's the first thing. The pace of innovation in terms of the aerospace and defense area is really rapid. And we have, as South Africa, lost a lot of ground in that space. I think most of the panelists are similarly aware of some of the products that preceded the democracy. And I think the most sort of very well known would be the helicopter from Denel, which has not been able to penetrate the market, in spite of the fact that the technology within Denel is superb. But because of the integration of components that come from a different IP technology, and in the marketplace, you can get your competitors, obviously, in that technology, in your exploitation of that technology, raising the flag and saying to customers, yeah, sure, buy it. Don't expect us to support this aspect of that aspect of it. That is absolutely one of the things that is really hampering on our growth. The other one is certification. I know I'm going a little bit out, but certification is as part of technology that we require, because in the controlled and regulated industry that's aerospace, you have to have globally accepted certification of whatever you may be supplying. And we very much hampered in terms of our regulatory bodies here, and I may go into that a bit later on. I just want to flag that. So the other thing that also I would like to flag in this is that really it's not really the technology, your affordability of the technology and putting things together, but it's more your environment in terms of your people. I know that my colleagues have been saying that in that space we are very well endowed, but I still think we have a journey to travel there. We're hemorrhaging skills to the UAE and other. I think obviously probably not only restricted to us, but particularly us in aerospace. And that is not really because of our ability to adapt into the new world of AMT, but more of the fact that our ability to compete is again restrained by IP, intellectual property. I just want really to come back to these issues a bit later on. I know that they expand the brief, but in the marketplace, unless you are actually able to penetrate the marketplace, then technology is neither here nor there, whether you're good or whether you're not. It's what you do with it.
Thank you, Mr. September. I think you gave a good outlook on another dimension, IP education. These are prescripts that make you tick in that industry, and in its nature of being highly rapid in terms of the iterations of models and so forth of technology, and how it has been difficult to make inroads at some point is still one of the challenges. So I think from having gathered the sense from the panel, one of the things now for me is to just get a sense that when it comes to policy as an enabler, how do we view that the policy has enabled these economic returns? I think the yielding of economic returns on the investment, so that we have products out there in the market that are viable for the market. I think I will throw this again. I will start with Mark again and follow up. So in terms of policy, where do you see our position, Mark, in terms of policy makers, in terms of ensuring that we have incentive schemes, in terms of having feasible policy that supports the intellectual property aspect and all of these other dimensions, but from a policy point of view, are we enabled to achieve and yield economic return so that we can create value for our organizations? And Mr. Blacknote, and I think President would have shared in our order. Thank you.
Thanks, Solani. And I think Mr. September raised some very, very important issues here. One is that, I think there's a couple of things. In fact, Mr. Bezuidenhout as well. You mentioned that the price and the accessibility of technology is easier because the price is dropping. That's a continual thing, and that will continue over time. Mr. September noted about IP shortages, and he's quite right. Until we start designing, getting in at the design stage, and designing in locally produced components and locally produced processes and so on, and finding African solutions to African problems, we will always be held ransom. That is the fact of the matter, and we will we will have to make use of what is available to us. I think that's another area that Mr. September raised, and the other one was competition. And competition is a reality, especially in areas like aerospace, electronics manufacturing, any of the high-tech areas. Competition is a reality, and you have to find a way to deal with it. The way to deal with it is either to go into niche areas, or to partner with very, very capable and able partners. So we've got the money, I've got the resources, and I've got the political will, if you like, to make sure that you're successful. I don't think a policy that is standalone will work. I think if you take a policy view of an isolationist or a nationalistic view, where you're saying, well, we will fight the world, that could have worked in the many years ago, and we saw there were positive results from that in the past. Mr. September mentioned about the Denel helicopters. It's called the Rooivalk, and there was also some very interesting innovation in frequency hopping radios. There was some technology in the computer space which was really, really well done in an isolationist environment. But we quickly saw that that does not work. Why? Because you are reliant on international supply chains and manufacturing, other manufacturing capabilities, especially in the more complex, advanced manufacturing environments. You're not making basic stuff. You're making very complex stuff. I'm looking here at the electronic sector, at the technology sector specifically, and that is the basis of the aerospace and defense industries. They are very, very prevalent in that area. So you'll be relying on some design, and again, you're going to, from the design stage right through to the production and dissemination stages, you're going to be needing to partner with the right players. So I think that an isolationist policy is not the way to go. You've got to have a very strong partnership approach, and I think this the last issue around policy. Policy is very tight with regulation, and Mr. September noted this as well. And certification. He was more on the certification, but that talks to the regulatory aspect. Very easily we can be find ourselves, if we're not in a collaborative environment with partners, or our policy is not open to collaboration and incentivizes collaboration and partnership as a key goal, you can quickly find yourself isolated because of regulation. You're not allowed to do business with those organizations, or your supply chains are constrained. So you've got to be very careful that the regulatory and certificatory environments are correct. It even drags down to the educational sector. If your engineers are not being qualified at a global standard, you're going to have a very tough time attracting investment, because the quality of your engineering is going to obviously be seen as subpar. So it starts right from the university level, at the graduate training level, the skills programs that get developed, CSIR for instance, CSIR, MyComTech, the FRD, these kind of places. They need to be very, very much internationally aligned and not partisan either. Take an independent view, and that independent view should be based on what works for. South Africa is in a great position to really position itself as the manufacturing hub for Africa. But in order to do that, we have to have African solutions to African challenges. What does Africa need right now from a manufacturing point of view? Not just so mining and resources, but that will pass. Okay. What is the next thing? What is the next that follows that? And start positioning and training our guys now for 10 years hence. Okay. So that by the time, 10 years time, how important is coal mining going to be? So those technologies around manufacturing for coal mining operations not going to be as relevant as stuff that's to do with satellite communications, for instance. I think so. Policy needs to reflect these realities. Needs to be very focused. It needs to take cognizance of the regulatory and certification environments, and it's got to be very, very strongly address a collaborative approach, yet understand that we operate in a highly competitive environment. Thanks, Olania.
Thank you very much, Mark. I think what Mark you're raising is very credence on the sense that you are touching on integratedness. I think that's what Mr. Blicknott on intergovernmental agency working together, research and development coming through so that it becomes shared, the information is shared, so that we know what are some of the components that we may switch in between industries and sectors to enable those gains, to be utilized, and yield maximum output. So I think you raised that collaboration is very key, but most prudently, integration in terms of how we work from the policy that is developed and the incentives. How do we take that forward to the industry and make sure that it is embraced? So thanks for that. Mr. Tembe, I think you're going to carry on from what Mr. Walker is touched on in terms of research and development, and see how do we take that forward.
Yes. Yeah, it's very important. I mean, I always refer to this. One of the leading AI countries in the world is China. And today when we talk about AI, we talk about basically things that are coming from China, but it was not so 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. China took a stand to say that we are going to radically transform our AI capabilities and make sure that our country will have that. And that trickled down from a need to have AI to all the government agencies, to all industries around, to say that this is our new mandate now. We're driving to really get this. And that should be the same case here in South Africa, in Africa. You know, when you talk about advanced manufacturing, you're talking about the current technologies, the current things that are working now. I mean, you cannot talk about advanced manufacturing if you're still talking about using technologies that was there yesterday. Therefore, there is a need to push new technologies. There's a need to actually drive new capabilities within the sector. And for that to happen, it doesn't just come from the DSI. It doesn't just come from IDC. It doesn't just come from one sector. It's all agencies working together. For example, you're saying that the Department of Basic Education are they actually generating capable personnel to actually go to varsity and actually develop capable technologies. Once they've developed that technology, SARS, is it giving them incentives, tax incentives to actually have them better export their technology and be competitive in the international market? You know, those kind of thinking should come out in one policy to say that once we are looking at advanced manufacturing, or once we are trying to improve companies with technology, this is what we need to be looking at. Look at the needs. Mr. Mark mentioned, and one of the speakers mentioned IP. How is IP actually disseminated? I mean, currently you have the likes of Armscor, which has a lot of IP that are just sitting in shelf there. How can we utilize that in the advanced manufacturing? You know, those kind of things should come out in the policy, and it's critical to actually have that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tembe. Mr. Blignaut, hand over to you.
Thank you. So policy, we're talking about policy, and I think policy, it's very important. And I want to try and bring policy a little bit closer to home as we're discussing this, because I think everything that everybody said, whether it's Tembe from the aerospace industry, all the different pieces have brought out exactly the same themes. And I think one of the most powerful things that is happening at the moment, and it was a report released in October of this year, specifically by the SADC regional strategy. It was the SADC Regional Strategy Development Plan 2020 to 2030, and it came out. It came out in October 2020. And the key behind this, and every piece of this discussion, is around technology, the dropping of barriers to inter-SADC business. And the other piece is the ability for us all to look at skills and the development of skills around technology, the fourth industrial revolution, and a whole section of areas there. And I think one of the key things that they do talk about is there is a new industrial revolution. If you look at their concept of megatrends, there's a new industrial revolution taking place. And if I just sort of from memory summarize, it was around automation. It was the whole area of shortening the manufacturing and getting our goods out to advanced economies. And it was the preparing for skills. And those are the three fundamental areas. And I think when you start looking into what we're doing, and I think it's very exciting as a group, because advancement starts at home. You know, you get things going at home, you make it work at home, and then boy, it just takes off. And we have an amazing home, and that home is the SADC region, and already our leaders are pushing forward that whole area in terms of technological development. So I think that is very, very critical. I think we do need to support, and I think a lot of effort from a governmental part can come in more with the whole area of additional skills and working with the SETAs to provide skills in the manufacturing space. And those skills, again, need to look at the different areas of technology, as I've said before, and the OT and IT and the bringing of this together. I think that is very key. But I think the management and our leaders are starting to see it, and the management, especially if you start looking at this sort of direction that the SADC is taking, that direction takes us forward in exactly what we need to do, which is drive skills, drive people forward in that area. So when you start looking at the different industries, we have also, as a group here in South Africa, a market out into Africa. How do we make that work? And Africa has a market into us. And the key, and most of our clients, when you start looking at the larger corporates and the larger enterprises, are all working in these different countries, and they need to have that regulatory environment very tight from the country perspective. But they also need, or they also want to be able to manage effectively their industries from South Africa out into those different areas. And part of that is the concept of data compliance, and in South Africa, PAPIA, in Europe, the GDPR compliance. Because when you start looking at that policy, you've got to start looking at who owns the data, where is the data, how does that fit together? So not only now have I brought security into the discussion, we're bringing the whole concept of data privacy into this discussion of manufacturing, because a lot of the information, is from a manufacturing perspective. So these are all parts of the if I could say, regulatory discussion, and it's very promising that our leaders have already sort of got a clear plan forward in this space. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Brignot. I will hand over now to Mr. President Ott.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I think in terms of the enabling policy framework, there's a couple of points on which most of the points on which I very much agree. Why I wouldn't necessarily agree is to say that there has been solid progress in this regard. And part of the reason why I say that is firstly, exactly because I think that the uptake of advanced manufacturing technologies across the continent is really going to be driven by a real implementation leadership in respect of sustainability, climate change type interventions, and the second, leadership and sustainability on digitization or digitalization. If you look at the private sector, for instance, not so much in South Africa, but very much in Europe, where all of this kind of stuff is being driven from from the climate point of view, you are going to see that the majority of companies are there already investing and building real competence with regards to sustainability on the one hand, and then digitization on the other. It's present absolutely everywhere. If you look at the hiring pages, that is what you're going to see. That's where the biggest shortage of skills is for them, because there's such a huge demand, because they recognize that this is the way forward. And so that is very much what we are probably going to see in the future here on our continent too, simply because business imperatives are going to drive that. But it needs to happen. It can only happen faster if there's going to be leadership from the government side. And interestingly, last year, I was part of a research project in relation to the pandemic and what that means for that amongst various governments in Africa. The view is still very much that action on climate is a luxury that we cannot afford other things to deal with. And I suspect that there may be some parallel views there with regards to the pursuit of digitization. But those two areas are important. And then when it comes to implementation, and here I want to draw back to the experience in South Africa, we've got two presidential commissions that were recently established, one on climate change and one on industrial 4IR. But unfortunately, those have been preceded by a litany of acronyms of oversight institutions or overarching economic interventions, which have produced good documents, some better than others, but has not necessarily translated into rapid or any implementation at all. I think probably the plan that's had the most traction is some of the iterations of the industrial policy that we've had, IPAP, over the years. But even that's only been a plaster on the bigger cancer of competitiveness that we've been able to see. But really, those are the areas we need to have the traction. And I think part of the way in which you will get at is instead of having oversight commissions, really having guiding coalitions where people have aligned interests, not so much making sure that there's sectoral balance from the social dialogue constituencies, but rather making sure that you've got a real guiding coalition with people with expertise, aligned interests and values around the promotion of those areas. Because the fact that it needs to happen is incontestable. You're either going to get on the train or you're going to stay behind. That's the one thing that I want to say. Then the two related things on data protection, I'm not going to speak about, but there's of course, relevant points that have been mentioned there by Mr. Blino. I think the whole question around IP, I was glad that Mr. September brought that up because it's something that I certainly noted. The whole thing around IP is not just about enabling the uptake of advanced manufacturing technologies for bigger companies, but it's also very relevant for smaller companies. And it's not just so that you can bring in these technologies, it's also that you can accomplish social goods like extending, if you can manufacture legacy parts as an independent, even as an individual, as a guy in your garage, if you can manufacture legacy parts for certain products on a small scale, it means that you can expand the lifespan of that product. It means that there's less waste that needs to be dealt with at the end of the day, whether through some other recycling activity or whether it goes to landfill. But you need to be enabled to do that. So you need to have repair information perhaps or whatever. And there's various restrictions that we've seen that are there. And I want to move to solutions there. There are various interventions that governments can make. Indeed, in South Africa, we've recently seen a sort of a non-IP intervention in this regard that had to do with right to repair in the automotive sector, where there was competition rules recently released that said that your car's guarantee shouldn't be impacted if you went to an independent repairer while the car is still under warranty. It just means that there is bigger scope for independent. So that's more like sort of from a competition point that they approached it. In other jurisdictions, such as in the US, it's approached from the right to consumer. In Europe, it's approached from the point of view of how you design it to expand the lifespan of products. But certainly, this is something that we need to look. So the interventions, and incidentally, this is a new area. It's not something that's hugely explored, even in academia. It's only really been dealt with in the last decade, and it's not something that's comprehensively addressed. So what do you need there? You need to look at things like non-intellectual property right to repair. So it's either restrictions on right to repair that's put in legislation, or there's competition regulations that are put forward. It's things like expedited approvals for relevant technologies like green technology. It's things like looking at putting incentives in place for companies to open up their IP strategies. And this is not so much about creating a situation where you have to hand over your IP and so in due course remove the incentives for innovation. It's actually the opposite and much more relevant in today's day and date, where companies are not so much going to be judged solely by their financial performance in the future. It's already started, where it's going to look at what your general impact is on the environment, on society, as well as your financial approach. And there's already a couple of examples where big companies have opened up IP because of the other benefits that it brings to the company. Two examples is during the pandemic, we've seen very rapid processes where companies released IP to enable broader manufacture of certain products that benefits them from a market point of view, reputational point of view, or whatever. And for listed companies in particular, that's very important. If you've got no reputation, you won't have value in the market. The second area where it can be where we saw an example is when Tesla, for instance, opened up its IP to its technologies to other automotive manufacturers. Why? Because they realized if the infrastructure for electric vehicles can spread quicker, they'll have bigger offtake, and they can't achieve that expansion of infrastructure out there on their own. They need to put out incentives for the market to grow, and that's how they did it. So those are some of the issues that I will mention now, but I don't want to take over. I'll yield back and respond again a bit later.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. So I think what I would take from those comments from Mr. Plignout and President is we have this level of policy sometimes documents, but still the challenge that we find is how are they linking to the bilateral trade agreements, the MOUs in terms of SADC, in terms of country inter-trading, in terms of, and how do we link this with this new AFTREC that has been promulgated and approved as a way to go in terms of promoting trade within Africa? And then how internally do we have instruments that enable all these policies to reach to the organizations which are Mr. September and Mr. Plignout and Mr. President from the agencies, which is IDC and TIA and others. So I think there still needs to be a sort of a more collaboration. I think that's what Mr. Walker said, collaboration, that we have to get to a point of understanding how do we collaborate for a yield that opens up the market, create fairness, but takes us to global competitiveness levels for all of us as a country, but also as industries that we are operating in. So I think that's what I'm picking up from that. And I think with the last round, I would want to touch on the aspect of agility. I think Mr. President mentioned the word Tesla, one of the companies that are very interested with their owner and founder and leader. How do we see agility being embraced in terms of advanced manufacturing? Because I think advanced manufacturing is part of agility itself. And do you see this being understood by the market in terms of taking the organization to a better place and competitiveness levels globally or even domestically? As Mr. Plignout said, SADC is our home first. We start play well at home. We see VW is having operations in Rwanda. We are seeing other countries are getting into electric bus manufacturing. So we are seeing our home, Africa, being destined for opportunities. Therefore, we may not need to look globally first. We need to start home. So our agility, our ability to be agile to these opportunities, I think we'll start with Mr. Walker because he does a lot of work within the continent to give us an overview, and then I'll hand over to Mr. Dembele. And then I'll hand over to Mr. September, and then I'll give Mr. Plignout, and then Mr. President. Thank you. Mr. Walker?
Thanks, Olani. Yeah, indeed. I think agility is a key factor. And I really like the approach of, deal with what's in front of you first. We are in Africa. Africa has a lot of things that need to be solved, a lot of challenges. And you mentioned too, and that's just to do with the transport industry. It goes into a lot of other industries as well, where we can actually look close to home and see what solutions are required. Start there. What solutions, and then policy should be shaped to encompass those kind of solutions. So pick a target almost. Pick an area that where we need to make an African solution. Build that solution, and then look at the competition. Put the collaboration partnerships together make sure that the regulatory and policy environment actually is encouraging tax incentives, skills building programs, sharing of knowledge, sharing of IP, and so on in an unrestricted basis, or for the overall good. To Mr. Bezuidenhout's point earlier, to make sure that we're solving these African problems with a very good advanced manufacturing sector. And many of these solutions, incidentally, will be very applicable to a large portion of the rest of the world. The problems that are faced in Latin America, unfortunately, be involved in a lot of emerging markets. And the problems that are faced in Latin America, in Indonesia, in the Far East, and so on, the areas of the subcontinent as well, they're very similar to what we have. So if we come up with a solution here, and we can come up with a manufacturing process and the technology here, we can re-export that. That'll be an income stream for us. So think of how we want to deal with competition and partnerships. And then I think the key is around looking at what is the demand, figuring out the competition sector, then making sure that we are open and work together to get to these objectives. And then it's about speed and flexibility. Speed to market is a very, very key area to be successful. And the key here also is being flexible enough to see that if there's change required, to take the hard decisions and make those changes. We can't, I think the competitiveness of the world at this point and the constraints that we face, we can't play half-heartedly. We've got to get into the game, and we've got to play properly and head to those goalposts. And South Africa is a nation of soccer and rugby players. We know how to do this. So I stop there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Mr. Dembe, I'll hand over to you from TIA side.
Thank you very much. There's one famous quote that I quite like. It's by Confucius. That when it is obvious that the goals cannot be reached, don't adjust the goals, but adjust the action steps. And that's what we've seen. You sit down with a client many times, and then you plan this perfect plan that you're going to develop a technology for this using these steps. However, a couple of months down the line or quarters down the line, you realize that the regulations have changed. The market has changed a little bit. The technology itself, the core technology itself has changed. So you need to be very, very agile so that you allow and you understand that with advanced manufacturing, it's not the technology of yesterday that is relevant. It's the technology that is happening now that is relevant. And that goes to the policies. The policies should understand or should cater for those kind of changes to say that if indeed the market in Africa or sub-Saharan Africa has changed regulations, we as South Africans or we as people who want to play in the international market, we need to actually adjust and allow for this exports and allow for this incentives to actually allow this technology to actually propagate there. So it is important very much to actually have that agility in your thinking as a company, number one, in your thinking as a funder, in your thinking as an organization, as a government, to say that with advanced manufacturing, you cannot say that yesterday's solutions will work today. So you have to be agile all the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Temele. Mr. September, I'll hand over to you.
I think I'll go straight and very much, echo what's been said, but more especially what Marcus just said in terms of agility. And at the same time, just give him a bit of a niggle in terms of the example that has been given to us, which is a Tesla example. And just say that when Tesla launched in the US, we had something in South Africa called Joule. And it was in advance of Tesla when Tesla launched in the US. But we are unable to support it in South Africa. And that should be a lesson. In fact, when you look at that in terms of what public support can be, sorry, I'm going to really abuse my second of fame, is that the agility that you're talking about also includes thinking differently. I hate out of the box because, thinking differently. When Jewel was tanked, all that actual, well, maybe I'm not a clairvoyant or anything like that, was required was market access. And if the market access at that time was not available from me as a private customer at that time, it was certainly available in fleets of government that is got. Do you understand what I mean? It's not necessarily the funding as such, but we tanked it because of a static approach to agility, and too much reliance on balance sheets and too much afraid to step out of the norm, too much, shall we say what? Yes, being afraid. So it also has to do with how you reward interventions when you get public support. If you don't reward those interventions that are out of the box, you'll excuse me, people are going to be afraid to step out. I am sure that the idea of the access to market for Jewel was not invented by me. I think it was obvious for all to see, but we tanked it. All right, let me just move a bit forward. Agility also, if you look, African Continental Trade Agreement, 70% signed, 70% ratified. What has happened? We've got the instruments, we don't implement. Agility also is about the implementation, get on with it, If I look at the support that the European Union has had for that particular agreement, spending real euros on it, on our behalf, it's embarrassing, and we're sitting on it, okay? Fortunately, we have signed it and we've ratified it, but let's do it. I really am a great believer in getting on with it. I don't mind failure as long as you move on from there, but failure because you fear to move is going to bury us, and along the continent, 70% is a very good uptake of the agreement. And then what? So agility is also obviously technological, I think, but my learned friends will have, you'll see my my education is law, so my learned friends have expanded on that. And I just want to touch a couple of peripheral issues in this regard. If you look at, I don't know how to express this, but it has more to do, maybe let me just put it out there. If you look, when people first woke up and talked about reshoring, taking things out of China back to the States, we saw Trump being the champion of that. Today, it's a business imperative of climate change that does it. It's a business imperative of advanced manufacturing that's a champion of that, not Trump. So, and it also means that our access in terms of the value chain participation is also very much going to be influenced by our distance from that particular market. That points to Africa, doesn't it? So sorry, I get evangelical. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. September. But you've brought something that is very fundamentally, and I think all of us in this panel have come across that all of us know strategy, but execution is magic. And it seems that not a lot of us know how to execute. And I think it brings back to what Mr. President touched on. We may have beautiful policy documents from advisory councils on the presidency, but are they defining how are we going to achieve? What instruments are we going to use? What incentives? I think Dembe touched on incentives from SARS and so forth. So I think all of us understand that some of the solutions are coming from having documents that enable the industry to benefit, the industry to implement, the industry to embrace. Because if the industry does not understand what is there to embrace, it becomes difficult then to bring them closer to you as government, as agencies, to work together collaboratively. As I think Mr. Walker had said, that we need this collaboration. So I think you touched on a very key element. We need to make sure we work on this issue of execution. It is not worthwhile for us, like you said, think differently. We came with abstract, signed, everybody wants to do it because everyone has got the will to do it. We need to work together from African Union point of view, but why are we delaying to implement? That is where the question begets, us to be Confucius land. We are Confucius land now. So I'll hand over to Mr. Blignot. Thank you.
Thank you. And Themba, thank you for that, because Themba actually hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. 70% policy uptake and, so what? When I work, I have a saying, and my staff go mad with me when I say it, but I say, and if you think of Nike, the Nike brand of footwear, it's JFDI. Remember Nike? Just focus, do it. All right? So get on with it and do it. And that's agility. Just focus and do it. Okay, so what do I mean? So government needs to do its stuff. It needs to do and set its policies for us in the right way. Then we as parastatal and as private sector have to jump in behind that and work and just do it. Just make it happen. Agility is about, if you could almost say, eating your own cooking. So I love cooking. I once was a baker in my life, which wasn't in my bio, but you've got to eat your own cooking. Okay. How do you do this? I need, as a South African business in manufacturing, to make my profits, to look after my shareholders and my stakeholders. And my shareholder might even be, if I'm a small enterprise, my wife, because I'm a sole proprietor, or it might be the board of directors, or it might be the government. Whoever it is, my stakeholders need to be looked after. How do I do my stakeholders? By fundamentally making a business run, work, and profitable. And we have such amazing tools, and I'm going back and I am bringing it down into that technology space again, which obviously is my area of expertise. But we have to, as a group of people in South Africa, make it happen. And you've got to eat your cooking. You've got to eat your own AI. Do you have AI working and going forward? Does data retention, have you got the policies in place, and are you looking at that? Are you using cloud? Are you making sure your IT infrastructure is secure and that your manufacturing environment is now secure? You don't want a hacker switching off, let's say, our power generation. You don't want it. How do I make sure I'm using the data correctly and getting the right information out? And how do I fundamentally bring this all together in smart manufacturing? And I think, my own company is doing that. It's eating that, and it's eating its own sort of cooking, if you want to call it that, when it comes to all of these different areas. And I think it's for each of us to be our specialists in the different areas we have, and to go forward and push out there and make it happen. And that's the key thing about being agile, because if you're looking after your stakeholders, you are being agile, because by default, you're going to make things happen. And that's the biggest point of all of this. So, I have a last saying, and it goes back to the people discussion. Look after your people and magic happens. Look after the people and magic happens. And this goes to manufacturing. Skill the people up. JFDI, just focus and do it. Get the people sorted, and away we go. That's it.
You've simplified it, Mr. Blignot. I like it. People, process, technology, performance. That's all you need. I think we have to not forget that component of people, because everything begins with and everything crumbles with. So thanks for those good insights there. Mr. President, I hand over to you.
Yes, when that F appeared in JFDI, I thought we were set up for an interesting session, but it's still interesting for the right reasons. So what I'd just like to say, just a quick note about the Tesla example. I didn't mention that because I've got an interest in cars, but I am a little bit of an enthusiast. So I know the Joule story well. We faced double opportunity costs there, not only just because we didn't support the Joule technology or try to see that through, but also because of the talent that we lost that actually started at Tesla. Now, I'm not going to get into what the reasons for that specific example is, but just look where it ended up. It ended up in California, where there was a very conducive ecosystem for something to Tesla, for Tesla to take off. It was the ecosystem that made that possible in California. And we certainly can look at recreating things like that here. And we're about to face a similar, or we have already faced significant opportunity costs with regards to hydrogen technology, for instance. We've been too late on that. In fact, I last year had a conversation with somebody that's fairly senior at the Department of Trade and Industry that expressed concern about the lack of place that hydrogen strategy had in the industrial policy of the country. Those kind of oversights are unfortunate. We must ask ourselves why that happened. Secondly, just about eating your own cake. You know, the UK, strangely enough, it never feels like that when you're there, but they are one of the economies that are highest up on the innovation rankings in the world. And one of the best practices that they implement that I've always thought that could have a real, that's implementable in South Africa, even though it's not to the same scale, is a portion, not a big portion, but a portion of their government procurement budgets are set aside for innovations. How do they do it? They say, government department, come up with a list of things that has no solutions now that you need a solution for. Now, some of these things can be processes, whatever. Some of them will be, I need a widget that will fix that thing, that will make it work. And this is one of the ways in which we can, you know, incentivize innovation in South Africa, and then they provide the funds to get that to market or to support that process. Just back to agility on a more like sort of practical level. You know, advanced manufacturing provides the technology to make certain designs that were not possible before advanced manufacturing was around. One of those examples are lattice type structures, which can be applied in lightweight, you know, structural panels, energy absorption, thermal insulation, ballistic protection, whatever. There's a lot of applications which I can't even think of right now because it's not really my expertise, but it's you know, it's starting to think, I've got this new technology, what problems are out there that I can fix? What solutions can I implement better because this is here now? And because this technology makes it possible to bring, you know, to do a quick change and produce small quantities immediately, you could start to do it. Not everything has to be vast and has to be international or manufactured here. It's not going to work like that because your inventory is going to go virtual anyway. We spoke about climate change, basically driving onshoring. And by the way, onshoring was not Trump. That was that already started to get momentum under Obama. He just provided the train for Trump to jump onto, of course. But climate change is making that onshoring now a real environmental imperative. It means that as a manufacturer of the future, your inventory is going to be virtual, it's going to be information, and the production sites are going to be dispersed in many instances. It's going to be decentralized, like energy production. And then, of course, there's new materials that are coming, new polymers, metals, composites that are becoming available for advanced manufacturing all the time. So these things make it possible to be more agile. And there's certainly certain industries such as fashion, which is not really, in many instances, something where additive manufacturing will play, but other technologies will certainly play there. Fashion, where we've really seen that kind of agility pay off for business models. Think of Zara, think of Fushini, that's been able to, in the face of very strong competition from China, be able to make it. But China, again, very particular ecosystem that was built around Shenzhen. We can replicate that and build real comparative advantage in South Africa and other African countries. I think certainly in Nairobi, we've already seen from a tech point of view that they've been able to build that advantage, and perhaps in Cape Town even as well. So it's not impossible for us to do that with advanced manufacturing. And I certainly hope we'll see some progress there in the future.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I think we've got a lot of work ahead of us. I think we've got some lessons we've learned from us not taking the opportunity from when we could have taken an opportunity with technology that would have put us ahead of everyone in that sector that was touched on, and we would be probably competitive now. And it's a lesson learned, and hopefully this does not replicate again in another sector. So I think with that said, I think now looking at the time, I would want to give a round off, maybe 2 minutes each, to just say, in terms of solution, what is the key word that you want to attach to advanced manufacturing in terms of how we can move forward in solving the situation we are in as a country in South Africa, but also how is it talking to global competitiveness? So what would be that word that touches on global competitiveness if we have to sum it up in terms of advanced manufacturing? So I'll give 2 minutes to each. I think we have sufficient time in 2 minutes. And I will start this time around. I will start with you, Mr. September, then Mr. Walker, then Mr. President, then Mr. Blicknote, and then Mr. Tembe, in that order. Thank you.
I think for me, really, is that there is no magic bullet. And I think we need to actually accept where we are, and we need to choose our battles. Choose them properly. We do have the tendency to think that we're competing with the West or to supply into the West. I do not believe that that's actually a very profitable route to think of. Yes, some of our breaking technology will probably be adopted in rich environments, rich countries first. But then at the end of the day, really, it's about the country balance sheet. We should do looking up north in our continent. And I'm actually quite excited by the fact that at last, the distance from market is now glaringly for even the blind to see. And that can only push us in the right direction in terms of the continent. And we mustn't be shocked of the fact that other nations or other jurisdictions, other geographies have actually already identified Africa as the go-to continent in the next medium-term future. And it's not because they've got better insights. We've got the same insights, but silly ambitions, if I may put them crassly. Yes, I think to be up at the top, you must compete at that level. For you to employ an AMT, you must have the ambition to play at the top tier. That's very good, but you can play at the top tier going to Africa. And unfortunately, I'll immediately say that sometimes technology adoption pushes you there. And that's where we are as propulsion manufacturers, inventors and manufacturers. We have to start in the States because they've got non-type certified area, which is wedging open the market. But that's a strategic thing. It doesn't mean that we don't know that there's a great opening that we must think harder how to fill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then next, I think it's Mr. Walker.
Thanks, Olani. Yeah, just to add on to Mr. September's comments, which I think were very relevant. The focus, I think there's five key areas. One is focus. We've got to be very focused, and I take that, from Martin's discussion as well. Focus on close to home, focus on what is necessary, and focus on getting there quickly. That's the focus side. Collaboration is going to be key, and that's with upstream, downstream, and sideways. Find who the best partners are. Find how you can work with them that is mutually beneficial, and that don't get stuck in the weeds. Get out there and get follow up on the focus area. Agility is going to be a key requirement because things move very quickly in the advanced manufacturing area. And don't, I'm an engineer. You tend to fall in love with your project. Okay, you want your project to succeed. You want that better mousetrap has to be the best. Don't do that. Be more agile. I think there's got to be a very entrepreneurial mindset from a commercial point of view. How is this going to benefit, not only from a governmental, social benefit point of view, but also it's got to benefit from a commercial point of view or economic point of view. You've got to take that triple bottom line view, and that includes then the climate discussion. And then finally, I think we need some very decisive and hard leadership. I think that we need to start thinking about where does this country want to be in the next 5 years, and forget about the infighting and the nonsense, and use the focus and let's get there, because the world does not wait. They don't care. We've got to make our own future. It's there's our hands. We've got to put our future lies in our hands. Let's use that wisely. That's my final comment then. Thanks, Olani.
Thanks very much, Mr. Walker, for that. And then I will give is it Mr. Blignot?
Thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to go back to Themba again. Themba, excuse me for plagiarizing you, but I really resonate with one of the things that you did say. And you said, one of the things you said was the key to adopting was technology. Technology will drive this discussion forward. And I'm absolutely a firm believer in it. I've actually made my career in the whole technology space. And there's a solid reason for it, because I believe technology gives us the ability to scale ourselves out. So where we are small, or we're looking at different areas, we now can scale ourselves out in a huge way. Just look at Mark Zuckerberg sitting in a dorm room with his Facebook, and suddenly he's scaled himself out to the world. All of these people, and it's technology that does this. And I do believe, I think you're right, technology is a very fundamental point. And I think we have to focus on those areas in manufacturing. And I said it before, focus on those areas in manufacturing that are going to drive the return to business, the return to our business, to our companies, to our country. We have to focus on those areas that are going to make a difference. And everybody on this, listening to this, will have a different perspective and a different focus. It's what it is. And that's good, because that makes our country good. And that's what we need to do on the one side. And again, it's that technology, but it's the combining of all these technology principles. It's not, yes, some areas will focus in specific areas, but if you're looking at, especially towards the larger corporations that will drive this change and will drive this innovation around smart manufacturing, it is a focus across the board, from, as we've talked about, the AI, the data, the security, the cloud, etc., all of those pieces. The other piece that I think is, and you asked about local competitiveness, Zolani, and you said, please discuss local competitiveness in our conclusion. And I think this is, I'm going back to skills. It's about, again, JFDI, just do it. Get the skills going. Whether that's private skills, whether that's sort of private skills as I did, I just started an academy and away we go. Whether that's public-private partnerships, or whether that's the government looking at strategic initiatives around this. Whatever it is, we have in Africa an enormous amount of people, in SADC, an enormous amount of people waiting, asking for jobs, ready to get skilled. And in the manufacturing sector, if we can get our skills right, us as South Africans have immense respect internationally, and we can use our skills with respect, our, if I could call it, lower cost base of those skills, and get them out into the market. Whether our people go overseas and they repatriate funds, whether our people are in South Africa, and a lot of my people are in South Africa or happen to be working overseas and are working back in South Africa, ironically, because of technology, we can do that. And those are the two things. So it's that adoption of technology, but looking at it as a business value and case, and a driving of the skills discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Quicknut. Mr. Bezidinot?
Yeah, ironically, I thought I'll leave education and trading for my last comment, but now I've been thoroughly usurped. But I think I can make a point here that is perhaps helpful, but doesn't repeat anything that's been said, and that is, I think one of the biggest gaps in terms of filling the skills gap for manufacturing in South Africa is the lack of interfacing between business and the tertiary institutions, the research institutions. And so what I'm not saying is that it's not happening at all. It's certainly not happening at the level that it's happening in the most innovative economies in the world, where you've got entire ecosystems built around. It's again that ecosystem thing, but it's a very tight interaction between the private sector, manufacturers, design institutions, and research institutions. And I think it's a mutual thing. The one needs to feed the other. And it's not just to the benefit of manufacturing. If you don't have opportunities for research and tertiary education to develop, then it's not. And I'm not just speaking obviously about the universities, it's also FET colleges and so on. And I think there, at the level of sector education and training, there's a lot more value that can be added. I think in South Africa, we've had a very complicated experience there because we've institutionalized it to a degree where everybody's responsible and then nobody's responsible. And there's a lot of red tape that and opportunities for abuse that unfortunately does come with it. But I think if we just look at the recent experience of extended producer responsibility, where there was first a push to go towards externally run initiatives that are funded by the private sector and where they must claim back money at the end of the day. And they decided at the end, we're going to go with a mandatory system where industry is mandated to hand in their plans to do their bit. But at the end of the day, they fund it and they rather get together a coalition of people that are more focused on it in a fundamental way. Rather than go the CETA route. I think that's going to deliver much better outcomes for them at the end of the day than to go with this very rigid system where we had that's focused on administration, but doesn't create the right incentives or promotion of the idea of that kind of interaction. It must really be about how do we, from an expertise point of view, as a sector, start to build our own interests over time, start to build our own center of excellence over time so that we can be comparatively or in absolute terms be globally recognized. It's happened in the past in South Africa in certain cases, and those successes need to be replicated rather than having uniform agreement at a very high level and then think that everybody is going to be motivated by that. It needs to be a more bottom-up process.
Thank you for that. And then Mr. Dembe, what is yours?
Thank you very much for that. Let me start by saying that Africa is the world, and I'm going to end it there. And then let me continue to say that the advanced manufacturing sector itself and the manufacturing sector itself, it's quite in a very interesting position, because if it focuses on, number one, solving its kind of problems that it is facing by looking at what current technologies are happening, this being competitive, reducing environmental impact, that becomes a byproduct. It automatically happens. If you look at focusing on additive manufacturing, you reduce wastage by just looking at implementing advanced additive manufacturing. You improve the product life cycle by using nanotechnologies that are happening, smart materials. So if we focus on solving the current problems that we're facing in the manufacturing sector and chasing after the latest and advanced technologies, then everything else is just a byproduct. Now, we still have to deal with these barriers in our societies, not just in the African space, but also at home in the South African space. It's not a secret that South Africa has a different social climate than anyone else. So we need to talk more about race. We need to talk about transformation in the manufacturing sector. We need to talk more. Policies need to be there to say that we have incentives for companies that are transforming, that are bringing in different skill set from previously disadvantaged societies. So with that, we start looking and moving forward into what other countries are doing. One speaker mentioned China here. China has got the ability that it has embraced its own culture, it has embraced its own problems, and it finds solutions within those contexts. And because of that, it becomes one of the global leaders. If we do that, we embrace that. Instead of running away from our problems, we fix them, we look at them and find ways to sort them out. We will be competitive and we'll be in a better space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think this panel really gave good insights, and I'm happy that there's so much more that we need to work on. And I think the opportunities are there, are plenty, from policy point of view, from organizational efficiency and effectiveness point of view. And I think also we need to be mindful. I always say, for my own observation in leadership, generally, is having looked at the Zondo, is to say, one of the things that in leadership of organizations is challenges. We cannot bestow accountability with incompetence. So you cannot make people that are incompetent accountable. The reason I'm raising this is exactly what you touched on, Dembe, is as much as we want to get, I think Mr. Walker raised, said, look, let's put our hands together, let's work together as a country, as industry, cross-sector, with the research and development that we do, so that we understand some of the opportunities that we can utilize, amongst each other, from mining to automotive, textile to so on. I think Mr. Israel touched on that, so that we can optimize, our outputs from that. But I also want us to not negate the issue of competence is the foundation. I think that's what Mr. Pliknot always referred to when he says people. Competence is the foundation of the all. Because if the organization in itself has no competencies, then it lacks capacity. When it lacks capacity, there's no ability to enable the capabilities, which is the technology now, to reach its yield. So I think with me, having listened that all the comments that have come to, really, it is to ensure that one of the important aspects that really have come to from our discussion is capacity from competent employees, leaders, stakeholders, partners, and all of us towards a unified vision will take us to where we want to get to in terms of competitiveness as a business, but as a country as well, from policy to enabled procedures and policies in the organization. So with that said, I say thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Biglot. Thank you, Mr. September, Mr. Dembe, Mr. President Note, and Mr. Walker.